Well, I guess there's nothing left to say but meeting adjourned. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Thumb Together. My name is Andrew Fantasia, and today we're going to be talking about Succession Season 4, Episode 10, the finale, With Open Eyes Together. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give us a thumbs up, give some love to that subscribe button, and if you are a fantasy fan, hey, and if you're a fantasy fan, of course you are, because that's why you're watching this Succession video, but you might consider checking out my fantasy novels. That's right, I wrote and I self-published We Were Wizards, a fantasy novel series that you can get on Amazon right now in hardcover, paperback, or ebook, and the sequel is already there too. We Were Wizards, Seekers of the Stones, and We Were Wizards, Ghosts of Wizards Past is a good old-fashioned, fun, frolicking adventure with magic and swords and crossbows, and one guy has a boomerang. It's lots of fun. So if you are a fantasy fan or you have one in your life, check out We Were Wizards. Be sure to leave an Amazon review because that helps me out, and you get to support an up-and-coming author. What could go wrong? Unlike We Were Wizards, a whole lot can go wrong with Waystar Royco, particularly the people involved with its transition to Gojo. As we end this show, I mean, this is going to be a different kind of episode of Thumb Together here because this is the end of the show, so there's nothing left to speculate on, really. It's just sort of a personal look at what this show has done and how it has made me in particular feel. And then, of course, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments how it has made you feel. But this is a show that has arguably done the impossible by telling a story so firmly rooted in being realistic that most of the time you feel like you're watching a documentary, but somehow never for a second loses an ounce of tension, of suspense, of entertainment value, of humor, or of drama. I'm looking forward to going back and watching the whole series kind of as a whole. I feel like this is definitely a show that has so many details and long gestating plot threads that binge watching it is a bit more recommended than the way it's been spread out. But I don't think I can remember a single episode that let me down. Some episodes are slower than others, but they always hit a point where you say, oh, I know why we're here. So this finale was called With Open Eyes. And keeping with tradition, it is named after a phrase taken out of a poem called Dream Songs 29 by a poet named John Berryman. And since it's a very short poem, and since we have finally reached the end of this series, I thought, hey, why not? Let's read this together and see what, if anything, we can infer from Dream Songs 29. So here we go. Ready? Let's see. There sat down once a thing on Henry's heart, so heavy, if he had 100 years and more, and weeping, sleepless in all them time, Henry could not make good. Starts again always in Henry's ears the little cough somewhere, an odor, a chime. And there is another thing he has in mind. Like a grave Sienese face 1,000 years would fail to blur the still-profiled reproach of, ghastly, with open eyes, he attends, blind. All the bells say, too late. This is not for tears. Thinking. But never did Henry, as he thought he did, end anyone and hacks her body up and hide the pieces where they may be found. He knows. He went over everyone, and nobody's missing. Often he reckons in the dawn them up. Nobody is ever missing. I can't sit here and lie to you and pretend like I know exactly what's happening here, but you may have noticed all 4 of the season finales were in that poem. Nobody is ever missing. This is not for tears. All the bells say, with open eyes. And that's where we are now. With Open Eyes, our finale. And I think that if I can take a guess as to why With Open Eyes is the line chosen for this particular episode, it would be that we have spent 4 years getting to know these people. We can't help sometimes to put ourselves into different teams, right? We're humans. We're very tribal like that. We want to see a person win. I'm sure there were plenty of people out there who wanted to see Roman sit in the CEO chair. I'm sure there were plenty of con heads out there who wanted Connor to come out on top. That's just how we roll. Even though we know, as the show goes, like the show never hides this fact, we know the Roys are despicable people. We can't help but enjoy the show for its entertainment value and latch on to one of these despicable people and say, yeah, but maybe they're the least despicable, so I'm with them. This finale reminds us, it opens our eyes and reminds us that no matter what, no matter how much of a good time you had, no matter how often you laughed at Greg's jokes, you have to understand that this is a world, a system, the whole corporate America structure there. It is a terrible, awful system run by terrible, awful people. And it always has been. And when the episode reaches its conclusion and Tom Wamsgans takes the throne as not a CEO per se, but a puppet CEO for Madsen, it is a fresh reminder of that. We have just spent the past season and a half constantly being shown what an enormous douche nozzle Madsen is. That guy is a prick among pricks, and yet he comes out on top out of everybody. He is the one who has the most win under his belt. He is laughing, he's smiling, he gets everything he wants. All of his problems have kind of been swept under the rug. He has what he calls a pain sponge to take the brunt of said problems in Tom. Madsen, this person that we have been conditioned as an audience to see as the villain, just because the Roys are the main characters, so we've seen this interloper as a threat, as an antagonist. Madsen, this guy, wins. And he is a giant, idiotic man-child, and we hate him, and he's annoying, and we just want to punch his stupid teeth out. But he gets what he wants. Why? Because that's corporate America, my friends. That is the business. It is full of awful people winning all the time and stepping on others to get there. This finale had a lot of moments where we just couldn't help but pump our fists and cheer as the Nicholas Britell music swelled and the Roy siblings banded together to put up a last united front and save their family company. And we think, oh my God, it's finally happening. They're getting along. They're making crazy drinks in the kitchen. They're actually smiling. I have never seen Shiv and Roman smile like that before, but there we go. It's finally going to be a satisfying, happy conclusion for these characters. Then the show gets you. The show says, no, you're not getting a happy ending, because never in the long, long history of the capitalist American structure has a good thing happened to a good person. That whole structure is about good things happening to bad people, while good people continue to get nothing but table scraps if they're lucky. That's why Madsen had to come out on top here. That's why it's the perfect choice to end this show, because this show is a dark comedy. It's bleak. You know, if we're looking at it from the basic King Lear point of view that the show was sold on at the beginning, King Lear is a Shakespearean tragedy, and in tragedies, the good guys lose. In Succession, arguably, there really are no good guys. There is just various flavors of shit. And we saw arguably the wettest, smelliest, biggest, most invasive shit come out on top, because that's corporate America. And personally, as a guy who likes to write myself, I couldn't think of a better ending and a better message to throw across to our audience, that this is never going to end happily unless this system that is the foundation of all of this goes away and is replaced with something better. My favorite quote of the night, my final favorite Succession quote, actually came from an unexpected source. It came from Caroline, who is dealing with her 3 children, and they have no time for her, and Kendall keeps saying, Mom, leave us alone. We have a very important board meeting tomorrow. And Caroline, dripping with sarcasm, says, oh, a huge board meeting. Wow, what an event. That's never happened before in my life. My plans being ruined by a huge board meeting. What a great little reminder of just everything Caroline has been through in her life as a person who was married to Logan Roy for how many years. And it's such a great example of just how tired people would get of this awful lifestyle of like, oh, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't there be a huge board meeting again? And the actress delivered it so well. I love that line a bunch. If you've been on Twitter and you've been talking about Succession on Twitter over the past, 12 hours, you have seen circulating the 3 screenshots of our 3 main Roy siblings when we last see them. And I'm going to bring those screenshots up here one by one, because I wanted to talk about the fate of Roman, Siobhan, and Kendall. Roman's is the trickiest one to read. That's why we're starting with it. But Roman had this moment in the episode that is going to stick with me for a long time, where he's panicking because of the way he looks. He's got this big cut on his face, whatever, and he has this breakdown in the CEO office. And during his breakdown, it's just sort of a whimpering defeat, a very different breakdown from the funeral. Just utter defeat where he realized he's never going to get this thing that he has wanted more than anything else. For the first time, he's sort of coming to terms with that fact that he's never getting it, and it's breaking his heart. It's kind of like being in love with somebody and knowing you can't be with them and having to just sit there and watch and smile as they walk off hand in hand with someone else. That's what Roman is going through. And that cuts to the bone as he is being hugged by Kendall. The only way Kendall knows to sort of snap him out of this is that Roman is a sadistic man who responds to pain, so he hugs him and digs his shoulder into his stitches until these stitches come out. Ooh, terrifying stuff. So when we end on Roman, we see him sitting alone in a bar, enjoying a drink. And I use the word enjoying because he does have a small little smile on his face. I can't tell if this is classic sardonic Roman kind of smile, or if he actually in this moment is enjoying just a quiet moment of happiness and relief. If I had to guess, I would say, in a way, he's pleased that neither of his siblings ended up with what he wanted. That's what this looks like to me. It feels like as long as everybody lost, he's not the loser he thought he was back in that boardroom when he broke down. As long as Siobhan and Kendall are also missing out on that CEO chair, then it doesn't make him the loser of the family. It just makes him another one of the family, right? There's nothing less special about him now. That's how I see this Roman moment anyway, and it's a very perfect moment for Roman Roy. Next, we're going to jump to Kendall, even though he was the last one that the show showed us. Kendall walks to the very south of Manhattan, stares out over the water, sits on a bench in Battery Park, and just keeps staring. We know from experience that Kendall has always walked a delicate tightrope when it comes to his own health and safety. Kendall is always just a hair's breadth away from self-harm. He even says in this episode, this is the only thing I'm good at, the only thing I'm meant to do. If I don't have this, I'm pretty sure I would just die. Last season, we had that moment where it looked like Kendall tried to drown himself in the swimming pool. And back in season 2, Kendall had that moment where he went up onto the roof and kept contemplating jumping off. So in order to torment him, his god-awful father put up those giant cages so that such a thing could never occur. Now we have Kendall Roy with nothing separating him from the water, but a pretty easily scalable fence. Except he is constantly being watched by the bodyguard that he hired, the same bodyguard who protected his father, the bodyguard who would go to any lengths to protect Kendall because that's the kind of guy he is. And in a way, at least this is how I read this, but it's that moment of Logan putting up the fences and saying, you don't die until I say you can die. It's that happening again from beyond the grave. The bodyguard is that fence now, and he is going to keep Kendall safe no matter what. Kendall probably doesn't want to be kept safe, but any attempts to jump into that water are going to be stopped. And just like that moment in season 2, he has no choice but to sit here with no purpose, utterly in despair, and wonder what on earth he's going to do next. But what a shot to end the series on, man. Though it still did not hit me as much as Siobhan's final moment. And this is it right here. Siobhan has spent the whole series, just like her two siblings there, trying her best to be CEO, to prove that she could do it. She grew up in a very old-fashioned household where the idea of a woman being a CEO was laughable. I'm sure if you asked Logan Roy, that's exactly how he would have reacted. So Siobhan saw to it to say, no, it's not laughable. We can be CEOs, and I can be a great CEO. And at the end of this episode, she finds herself kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because she can't get the chair, but she knows Kendall doesn't deserve it either. Pay close attention when Kendall and the siblings walk into the boardroom and Kendall finally sits at the CEO desk and he puts his feet up on the desk. Pay attention to Siobhan's reaction. They make a point of showing her reacting to him putting up his feet on that desk as if he's desecrating something sacred. And that's where you can see her support for him start to crack. That's where you see her realize, to dust off an old Arrested Development chestnut here, I've made a huge mistake. We see her next in the boardroom where she freaks out and leaves and decides, I can't give the company to Kendall because he is not fit to be CEO, and she's absolutely right. So now Tom Wamsgans, her quote husband unquote question mark, is in the chair, and all of a sudden the power dynamic has shifted. The power dynamic that we've seen for 4 seasons where she has had power over him. She has finally had power over a man in her life, and all of a sudden that is gone, and now he is CEO, and she's having his baby, and there's nothing really left to do but sit in this car, and in the most unpleasant, awkward, impersonal way possible, take her husband's hand. Oh, God, this shot, man. Talk about a picture being worth 1,000 words. There is a whole saga here in this shot, because what we're looking at right here is the, in my opinion, most tragic of all the fates of the Roy siblings. It is history repeating itself, because Siobhan has always wanted to become her father, to step into her father's shoes and prove she could do it, but instead Siobhan has become what she hoped she never would. She's become her mother. She's become Caroline. It's no coincidence that the episode gives us so much of Caroline to remind us of her existence and the kind of life she leads, because now with a baby on the way, now Siobhan's only way to get close to the power is to just stay married to the man who holds it all. And she is going to spend the rest of her life, just like Caroline, stuck in a cold, loveless marriage, having children who never get to have a healthy relationship with their father because he is a cold, distant CEO who, at the end of the day, couldn't give two shits about them. And those kids will grow up to be just as unhinged and unhealthy as the Roy siblings themselves, and the circle of life will go on. As George Lucas puts it, it's like poetry. They rhyme. So even though we didn't get what I hoped that we would get, which was a different version of the opening credits, but it's with Siobhan and Kendall's kids, we pretty much know that's exactly what's going to happen in their lives. So in a way, it's kind of right. It's kind of happening. We know that that's exactly how those children are going to grow up. And thus we end Succession. It's over. I personally think they couldn't have stuck the landing any harder. They crushed it. This is going to be a finale people talk about for a long, long time. It's a show I can't wait to revisit. I'm so happy it got closure, unlike, Westworld, because Zaslav is a dick, just like the other CEOs in this show. See what I mean? Life imitates art. I want to thank you guys all so much for joining me on this Succession journey across 4 seasons, and I don't even know how many years. I can't remember what year this started. I'm sad to see it go, but I'm happy. I love when stories reach a satisfying conclusion. It's a lot harder to do than you might think. But that, my friends, has been Succession. Period. This has been Thumb Together. I have been Andrew Fantasia. You have been incredible. I will see you all here next time for whatever comes next. Until then, adios.